And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. What is it? Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If there's methane, it'd be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? We don't need any more of these.
Hello, Internet. It's me again, everyone's favourite, or I should say, well, Chris B isn't here. So for this stream, everyone's favourite NASASpaceflight Brit. Well, there's loads of people joining me in the comments box today. We've got Alex, got EJ, we've got Sawyer's kind of in the background. We've also got Kevin working behind the scenes. We've got Patrick working behind the scenes. So I'll go through, let everyone introduce themselves. Starting off with Alex. How are you doing? What are we actually looking at? Because the ship's been destacked. What are we looking at, Alex?
Oh boy, we're looking at many things right now. 'Cause, yeah, the ship has been destacked. We saw it destacked very early this morning, very late last night. But yeah, we're kind of expecting the workers out there to set the flight termination system for flight ahead of the launch, because we're expecting that first launch to occur next week. So, boy.
Very, very, very exciting. The anticipation is real. Those of you who have been watching Starbase Live, our 24/7 feed, you would have seen it's been a very pretty sunset so far this evening down in Boca Chica. We've also got in the comms box EJ. Hello, welcome to a NASA Spaceflight live stream.
Oh, thank you for having me. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. The excitement. I said it yesterday in the Raptor side. I don't want to. It's gonna go. Is it gonna go Monday? It was meant to go Monday, but is it going Monday? Until this thing leaves the pad, we won't know what has actually happened to it.
I mean,
we've got it.
it's definitely been sorry. I mean, it's definitely been kind of crazy. I mean, putting two together here that thing is actually going to leave the pad soon. That's kind of messing with my head a little bit. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, it's just the development timeline in Boca Chica has been going for so long. I say so long. There's vehicles like SLS, which you can trace heritage into shuttle, and even just the concept of SLS from the 90s, right? This has been like, what, 2018, 2019, since we've actually seen stuff getting built. But it feels like so long, and it's been 4 or 5 years. It's been, in aerospace terms, it's been barely any time at all, but yet it feels like it's been so long. And it's just exciting to finally see this thing actually about to launch. I'm going to get into a couple of super chats here. Well, actually, a gifting first from Blake. We have 50 team memberships. Thank you very much for that. We definitely appreciate it. It's a gifting membership similar to a super chat, but along with your financial contribution, 50 other amazing people now get access to the Red Team membership scheme. So if you were one of the people who received that, make sure to give Blake a big thanks in chat. We also have a $5 super chat from Connor G saying, love the new intro. Like the new intro as well. I think everybody who likes the new intro. If anybody doesn't, that's not my problem. You can deal with that yourself. But I think everyone is a big fan of the new intro, the theme song as well. I mean, what a way to hype everyone up, right? I mean, it's just incredible. I'm a big fan. And while we're going through super chats, another one just came through from Ground Umbilical Carrier Plate. I recognise that name. Ryan on an NSF stream for the win with a $2 super chat there as well. Thank you very much for that, Ground Umbilical Carrier Plate. I'm sure that's not the last we'll see of you either. So, Alex, is there anything particular that's kind of catching your eye at the moment? I can see we're currently looking at the gorgeous Texan sunset at the moment with Booster 7 on the orbital launch mount on the left, S-24 kind of in the middle, sitting on a stand. There's some cranes about. So yeah, what's kind of going on at the pad at the moment?
Yeah, we actually, right before we went live, we saw one of the, it was sort of like a fumigation car or something. It was like a car with a long pipe in the back, and it was smoking everything. I think that was probably from mosquitoes, because it's horrible down there. We actually heard about that from Adrian, because Adrian is right now there at Starbase, so he's discovering the existence of basically clouds of mosquitoes surrounding you. So yeah, and yeah, right now we're kind of seeing what's gonna happen with the flight termination system. We see, so you see that left there on sort of on the center left, what it says is SpaceX. That is the tallest one that they have to be able to reach the tallest points of the vehicle, and that reaches only the top of the booster. I think that's probably going to be the one that we're going to look for, setting the flight termination system on the booster, because the one that we're looking for right now is on the ship, but they haven't really worked on that yet, probably because they're waiting to get closer to the actual launch date. But yeah, we also expect at some point for the booster to also be, its flight termination system to also be configured for the flight. And obviously for that one, we're not expecting a D-stack of Booster 7. We're just gonna see them doing that already on the pad. So yeah, right now, if anyone has any questions, tag at NASASpaceflight in chat and ask away, because I'm probably sure that people are having questions about Ryan and EJ being today on the stream, because this is their first stream. I'm actually the veteran one here, and they are the first. This is their first stream, so I'm sure probably people are gonna have questions about that.
I did a Raptor yesterday. I did a 1 hour Raptor and I spoke about 5 times. That
Sure.
makes me fully qualified to host an NSF live stream. Speaking of questions, we have one here from Lucas158 _ at NASASpaceflight. If they scrub the launch on Monday, again, if they launch on Monday, the timeline is still up in the air. We don't know what's happening. How many days would it take them to be able to launch again? EJ, Alex, either of you have an idea of how long it would take to recycle the world's most powerful rocket?
I mean, judging by what you see from, like on the OLM there, the launch mount and everything, I think that's just a propellant deal. Commodities, I think, because you're going to get boil off, but I mean, they do scavenge the methane, so I would say LOX is probably the bottleneck there, but I don't know. It really comes down to how much that tank farm can hold.
And Ronald has a very good point, which I was just hinting at there before. Is the 17th still a go? Well, I believe we're still waiting for something from the FAA, aren't we, Alex?
Yeah, so SpaceX is obviously saying that they are ready to go for the 17th. I'm sure most as always, when you do a flight readiness review, I'm actually going to explain all of this in an upcoming article, so spoiler alert. But basically, they did a flight readiness review on Saturday, and the next thing that they're going to do is a launch readiness review. It's different. You basically focus on different things, and usually between the flight readiness review, when you finish it, even if you give it a go, sometimes there are open items that they are called, basically a few things that you have to work on before you go into the launch readiness review. The launch readiness review is the one that should be clear of anything. Like, there's nothing left else to do other than prepare the thing to go. So, there's for sure some open items there from the flight readiness review. They're working through that. They're doing all the stuff. Most of them are not actually hands-on work, because we haven't really seen them doing hands-on work on the vehicles or the pad. But I think the other day they were basically like just painting tanks or something like that. So they're doing stuff, but they are not like really important, clear stuff like a wet dressing or a static fire or something like that. So that's from SpaceX's side, then there's regulatory approval, which we're expecting to come by. Like SpaceX is expecting that this week. But again, it is not guaranteed to come this week. It's not like, yes, it's hard, set in stone that it's going to be this week. It could still be next week. And then we will see a few days more of delay. But again, if it happens, we're not really delaying too much things here. So I wouldn't be complaining, to be honest, because I've waited for like 4 years since we saw Starhopper, right? And so it's gonna be a few days at most, I think.
And Travis has a good question here, which is how long before starships, like shuttles, are debated for which is the best? They're throwing in Endeavour. Personally, I just have to say Discovery, because we all know that Discovery is the best space shuttle. It's the Diva shuttle. It is the best shuttle. Sawyer, I don't know if you have any word on Endeavour.
My vote is Endeavour. It is still my girl. It is literally the license plate on my car. It is my favorite orbiter. And I totally put that question in the queue because we have another shuttle expert joining us, EJ.
I have words. I have things to say. I have things to say. Are we talking about the orbiters that are still around, or the orbiters that have been declared missing in action?
I say all of them, and again, it'll like we have now. The multiple flown Falcon 9s. You've got the multiple flown shuttles. So yeah, I'll say any shuttle that flew.
Yeah, I need your all's opinions on which one is the best.
Well, if I had to pick one, I'm gonna pick Challenger. Not because it's missing in action, but because Challenger was the first shuttle that was made after Columbia flew. So it was made out of a structural testing article from the shuttle program STA-099, and then they converted it into an orbiter. It was between taking Enterprise, stripping it down, and making a new orbiter out of it, or just taking Challenger, which was basically the shell of a shuttle. And when they decided to do that, they incorporated NASA and Rockwell and Boeing and all the contractors incorporated all the stuff that they learned from the first 4 orbital flight tests. And that made Challenger have less tiles. It was a lot lighter. It was basically like Space Shuttle 1.1. And all orbiters that were built after that one, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour, are all based off of Challenger's design, not Columbia's. So that's why Challenger, in my mind, it reigns supreme, because all these other shuttles that everybody likes, Discovery, Atlantis, Endeavour, they can all look to Challenger for the blueprint.
Also of note, today is 42 years to the day since the first flight of STS-1.
Yep.
Sorry,
Very
we got sidetracked
fitting.
with shuttle there,
Yeah.
but I think the
Mark
point is
off
that
your
also...
bingo cards, everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Okay,
of
Ryan,
course we mentioned shuttle
now it's-
stuff.
But now it's your time, because this like EJ and Ryan are new here on NSF. They're not new on their own stuff, but they're new here, so people need to know. Ryan, your favorite shuttle? Come on, let's go. We're talking about Starship, but it's relevant as well because it was also reusable. You
Yeah,
also need
before we
to
get
join.
properly into Travis's question, Discovery is the best space shuttle. My personal opinion for Discovery being the best space shuttle is because when I was a little boy, back in the old day, back when I was a little one, I had 3 shuttles, right? But because there was 3 shuttles currently operating, and I had the 3 shuttles. They were all called Discovery because they didn't actually have the different names. So that's why Discovery is my favorite, because all of my shuttles were called Discovery. Now, in terms of the Starships question, I think we could only really start getting attachments, at least personally, I can only really start getting an attachment to the vehicle once it gets a name. A number, a serial number is just kind of, it's just a number. I want a name. I want a nice name for Starship, and then I can get attached.
Well, okay, Ryan, so does Starhopper count? Does Hoppy count? I mean,
yeah, Hoppy has a name. Everyone loves Hoppy. How can you not love Hoppy?
Right now, Hoppy would be the winner,
It's the only one with a name, so on technicality, it's everyone's favorite.
I mean, technically, these vehicles have names. It's just Booster 7 and Ship 24. It's just not a grandiose name.
They're not
but
names,
it's
though.
proper
They're
name.
serial numbers. They're serial numbers, Alex. It's not names.
Come on.
Right, like
Come on.
OV-104 or 105 versus calling it Atlantis or Endeavour.
Yeah. You get attached to the name. See, it's the name. There's been many different super chats and other sorts of donations and things that have come in over the last 10 minutes. So I'm just going to run through them really quickly. Thank you, Darkstar, for becoming a new member, becoming a Red Team member. If I remember correctly, that's the second tier of memberships that you can get. We also got a $4.99 super chat from Musical Wolves, a very common name on NASA spaceflight streams. Will S20 fit a hula skirt prior to Restacked? I think that's in reference to the thumbnail that we published last week about the trajectory, the brilliant joke thumbnail that Brady came up with, which then managed being ran on the stream. We also have a gifted membership from Jonathan. Thanks for gifting one Red Team membership. If you were the person who received that, make sure to thank Jonathan in chat. We also have a $5 tip from Austin. Thanks for that's tips.nasaspaceflight.com. Starships are meant to fly. That's a brilliant song quote. Sawyer joke time. What do you call a comet wrapped in bacon? A meteor.
Oh, that's
Sawyer,
I haven't heard that one
Sawyer
before.
level.
I haven't heard that one before. That's pretty good. I would go as far as to say jokes about meteors truly rock.
Oh,
Look at that
God.
sunset. Look at that.
It's beautiful.
Texas sky
The
there,
jokes.
right
Oh boy. It's
We're just
so
going to
beautiful.
completely ignore that one, Sawyer.
Thanks.
We also have a store message from, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, OFT Unisex Hoodie. Thanks very much for the store order. Misa?
Probably Micah.
Micah? There you go. Look at me. I'm so good at my pronunciations. I do apologise for absolutely butchering that. We also have a super chat from Park the Forg. Is it going to go up? There we go. I'm praying for Starship to launch on the weekend. I don't want to miss it because of school. Well, unfortunately, I hate to break it to you. At least this weekend, no. Alex, are there any chances of these things going up on weekends? I don't know if the FAA will have any say about kind of times and they'll want it on a weekday for like regulatory shenanigans.
Yeah, sadly, it's not gonna be this weekend. Now next weekend, I think they have windows. Well, they have a window for Friday, but I do not believe they have one for Saturday or Sunday though. So, yep, it's on during the week basically, not weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. Ground umbilical carrier plate, hello again. Hoping for a scrub on the 17th and launch on the 20th. I take that day off work every year. I certainly feel like Elon wants his 420. That's something he's been vocal about on Twitter. Not only with the Booster 4. Oh, we've got some road closures as well.
Oh, there we go.
Not only with Booster 4 and Ship 20, which then became Booster 7 and Ship 24, but now April 20th, 420 if you use the American date system, which in my opinion is wrong. We also have a super chat from Shortline 614. I don't have a question. I'm just super excited. EJ is on NSF. There we go. We've got the official start of the EJ fan club. There you go.
All right.
We also have a super chat from Blake Alexander. Sawyer, after what milestone will you change your license plate to change it to some sort of Starship-related vehicle? Moon, Mars? Spill the beans.
That's a good question. I mean, I've had Alicia and a bunch of other people at the Intrepid trying to convince me to change it to Enterprise, but Florida's weird with their character limit on license plates. I think once we get a lunar landing, I'll consider it. But then again, there's still so many endeavors, because there was the Shuttle Endeavor, now there's Crew Dragon Endeavor, especially if they name one of the starships Endeavor, then I'm keeping the plate.
Apollo as well. It was
oh yeah, you're right.
Command and service module. Well, the command module actually, not service module, but yeah. That's actually why I like Endeavor, because you have Apollo, you have Shuttle, you have Crew Dragon, you have merch. Because we had at one point, I think it's already retired, but we had at one point merch of Endeavor, with all of the ships named Endeavor. But my favorite is that it was the first launch of the ISS, STS-88, and that was on Endeavor. And yep, also the first launch to Hubble after it was launched, to be able to repair all of the stuff. So yeah, Endeavor for the win.
we also have a super chat from. Well, we actually have a super chat from the ship on screen, Starship 24. S24 is definitely the best because I have a logo. We do have a logo. That is true. I don't know if it makes you the best though, because you haven't actually flown yet, unless being hooked up onto Chopsticks counts. Musical Wolves yet again. My orbital test patch and shirt should arrive Tuesday. Will that be before the launch? Well, it depends if it goes Monday. If you are in what's his name's Chris Bergen's club, and you think it's going to be scrubbing a few times, you could be in luck there. We also have £10 from Richard. The terrible jokes almost make me cancel this. Almost. And another one from Fred, just clearing out the queue here. When a star is eventually named, its name must be as the first demonstration shuttle. Call it the Starship Enterprise. Any thoughts on that one?
I'm okay with this.
Starship Enterprise, absolutely.
That should be one, definitely.
Yeah, I'm a Trekkie myself personally, so I'm down with it. All right. If you don't mind, I'm going to hop in here and ask you guys a couple questions here. So we have one from Nadimer asking, are there any Starlink terminals mounted on Starship for live video feed? And I'm guessing that would also be for data as well. Do we know that?
Aren't there a bunch of antennas up near the top of the ship where it's painted S24, where the X is on the top of the vehicle?
Yeah, and also even on the payload bay hatch, they also have one, and on the booster they have two on each aero cover, and I believe they have the smaller ones like near the top as well, like in the quote unquote intro stage, because it's not really an intro stage, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah, they have a bunch of Starlink antennas, like from different sizes as well. Like the ones on the aero covers of the booster are really big, like even larger than a head, like a human head. It's way larger than that, and because I made that comparison because I've seen people next to the aero covers on lifts, so you see their hands, little hands, and then the big thing, like the big black round antenna there. It's like, yeah, it's very big. And then a smaller ones up the top. So yeah, they have quite an array of antennas. You will probably say.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. There should be no issues with getting signal with as many dishes as they've got going there. Go ahead, EJ.
No problem. I mean, part of it, guys, is there's a bunch of different antennas, and those antennas are probably for different frequencies, UHF, short band, stuff like that. But I mean, you got to remember, if we launch this thing, or they launch this thing, and it goes off the pad, you're not getting it back. You're not getting this one back. It's probably not going to come back in one piece. So rockets, a thing that I like to explain is that rockets have all of them have all different kinds of antennas on them. And not only that, but those antennas are designed to downlink very, very quickly. They're very high bandwidth antennas. So you can move the data off because once again, you're not getting the thing back. Hopefully in the future that'd be good, but
yeah, we can see those antennas on the top. So that boxy thing that you can see sort of center right on the booster, that is at the top, you see like two black circles. That is the antennas for Starship, for Starlink, excuse me. And there's another cover on the other side and also has the same things. It makes sense that it's on the top because that's in the direction of the satellites. You wouldn't put it on another place. Like it doesn't make sense. But yeah, this location makes sense. And then on Booster 9, which is the next one, they removed those. So they're going to be on the chines, which is a whole nother thing as well. It's going to be interesting to see that.
Exactly. And I do just want to say thanks to the people that are running the cameras behind the scenes as well for getting that up for us so quick. And EJ, reminds me a bit of one of your passengers when you do your KSP2 streams.
Wait, what?
Don't you have a certain robot type creature that goes aboard your ship sometimes? Eyes kind of look a little bit like those Starlink dishes.
They do. They look like Marvin. That's right.
There you go. Alex, I'm going to pose this one to you from the Hoff because I mean, right now, one of the things that the reason we had the destack was to arm the flight termination system ahead of the main flight. So the Hoff asking, what's the difference between the FTS for Falcon 9 and for Starship?
Well, there's many differences, but I assume the system just works on the basic same principles. You have a charge, you have a detonation system, basically the thing that detonates the charge, and then you have also a computer that takes in inputs from all of the status of the vehicle and everything, and then sends the signal to the detonator to detonate the charge. And so usually what you have for these systems, you need a physical way to be able to save them, because you surely like the way of actually arming the system is just telling the computer, hey, you can actually take now the moment of, you know, whenever something happens, you can now start using these FTS, right? Like actually activate it. The problem is, even if you don't have the computer in that setup, you still need something physical in between to avoid triggering the flight termination system. So that's what we're going to see here with the Starship, where there are safety pins on the system that physically separate the basically the computer that tells the detonator to detonate the charges. And once that happens, the risk is increased, and so I assume at that point there not gonna be a lot of people around the pad. We're not seeing a lot now, but before we were seeing a little bit more. The whole point is that on Falcon 9 they can do that already on the pad when the rocket is horizontal. Not on the pad, but like on the hangar before rollout, and then when they are rolling out, they are out there on the pad, they're vertical. No other people, unless it is the ground people working on the rocket, is going to approach the location. Here at a Starbase, for example, you have other construction going on the suburban pads and other stuff like that. So all the safety has to be taken into account. And this is why we think that pulling off the pins, it's a physical pin system that maintains that safety. We think that's going to happen closer to the launch and not anytime now. And we really haven't seen it today.
Yeah. TechnoGeek asking a question very, very much along those lines. Have they activated the FTS yet? No, they're going to do that closer to the launch. That's our best guess now, at least. Right, Alex?
No, yeah, they haven't activated the FTS. Yep. Well,
we have
let's. So I think I should do one little explanation here. So one thing is pulling the safety pins. Another thing is arming the flight termination system, and another thing is sort of triggering it, because it's sort of like a firearm. Basically, you have a safety system, you have a trigger, and then you actually pull it, right? Like you actually shoot or whatever, right? So the whole deal with this is that you have a safety system in place, you have the trigger, and then you actually activate it. And so that's sort of the difference here. We're waiting for the first step, which is remove the safety.
And Noah has a question about where is the flight termination excuse me, nearly said a naughty word there. Where is the flight termination system on both the ship and the booster?
You want to take that, EJ?
I think I've been kind of out of the loop on Starship stuff lately because of Kerbal 2 coming out. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I'm pretty sure it's on the common bulkhead on both Starship and Super Heavy.
Yep, you're correct.
Okay, cool.
There's a box with a charge and all the systems and everything, and so they have to go up there to the common dome of both vehicles, and that's basically what they're going to be doing, approaching that part. On the booster, as I mentioned before, they can reach that. It's close to the ground-ish. It's still very high up, but they can reach it from the ground. But when the ship is stacked on the booster, the FTS box is like 100 meters off the ground or something like that. It's very, very high up, so they cannot reach it from the ground. And so that's why they had to destack.
Question from the smelly hippie. Does Starship have a cabin interior for this test flight? And to my knowledge, this is a very empty ship. They sealed off the Starship spitting out Pez dispenser hatch, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, they sealed the Pez dispenser up. I think the payload bay is what's left of the Starlink dispenser. I think for whatever reason they decided not to use it on this.
Do you
Okay.
think they could still put like something funny, like a wheel of cheese or something?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, but
We've had wheel of cheese. We've had a Tesla. My vote is still that since it's a Pez dispenser, they put in actual Pez.
That would be very funny. But with like Falcon Heavy, we knew the Tesla was going in there. They SpaceX told us about that beforehand. Not very much beforehand, but they told us about that beforehand. So I'd imagine if they were going to put anything in Ship 24, they would have told us about it by now, considering it could potentially launch on Monday if everything goes perfectly first time, which I will reiterate is extremely unlikely. Not impossible, but extremely unlikely for a vehicle and ground infrastructure of this scale. We've got a few more super chats and the like that have come in. First off from Redbeard. Just got my OFT patch today and couldn't be happier. Been watching since the SN4 days. My friend and I love you guys. Keep up the amazing work. Well, thank you very much, Redbeard. And thanks for the super chat. We've got a 1999 super chat from, what is this? KCJ Bomber FTW saying 420 blaze it in lieu of the potential launch date on the 20th of April for Starship. We have a store message here. Studying and watching the stream again tonight. Hype for Starship. Keep up the great work. And that's the Starship OFT patch sticker, which you can also get for yourself if you like. We've got another store message. Thanks for the great coverage. Reminds me of watching the test flight of Shuttle Enterprise. That was a long time ago. And you got the patch on the shirt, which I do actually quite like myself. Thank you for the amazing coverage, guys. Love from the UK. That's from Leighton with a store message, who got the test flight patch. We also got a super chat here from James saying, can't wait for the test flight. Fingers crossed for an abundance of useful data. Great video today. Ryan is very chilled in front of the camera. Thanks for the compliment.
There's a new video today? I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Sawyer absolutely grinding that video out last night. Absolutely incredible. From we got that news last night, unexpected, and we cranked that video out for you guys to watch for your viewing pleasure. And interestingly, English just left my brain. Interestingly, the name for the OFT, the orbital flight test, is it the integrated flight test? Is it the Starship flight test? There's so many different names flying about now. I don't know what to call it, because SpaceX is officially calling it the integrated flight test, or is it the Starship flight test, or also the orbital flight? Alex, give me the details. What's it called? What's it called?
Because I've visited their website for so long, just looking for missions out there for Falcon 9 and everything, literally hundreds of times, because there's been hundreds of Falcon 9 launches. And usually when you go to their website, the first thing that you see is sort of like upcoming launch and whatever, and the name of the mission is the first thing that you see. And so it says Starship Flight Test. So that's the name that they have put to the mission. On top of that, they also have a launches section on their website where you can go. There's like a burger kind of menu on the right. You go there, you click on launches, and you see all of the cards for all the past missions and the upcoming missions. You see Transporter 7, Starship Flight Test, and then Intelsat 40, whatever, like all the previous missions. That's also a key to knowing what mission name they're having for this mission. Starship test flight or flight test. I don't know. It's one of both. And the last nail on the coffin is when you go to each mission on that launches section. So you go and click one mission. The link actually has the name of the mission. And in the case of a Starship, it says a Starship Flight Test. So there you go. That's the actual name of the mission. And they call it integrated just to have like a good word for fully stacked Starship. Because fully stacked arguably is not really that good looking on when you write it and say it and everything than integrated test flight. Like, ooh, that's like I don't
SpaceX
know.
just needed a fancy name for everyone to call
Exactly,
it.
exactly, like a fancy name for fully stacked.
I mean, the thing is, we want it to be an integrated flight test, not a disintegrated flight test.
Thanks, Sawyer. As
You're
always.
welcome. I'll hand it back to you.
I mean,
Chief.
you know,
Go
before
on,
we get
EJ.
to the next question, why don't we just piss everybody off and just call it Starship Launch System? So just call it SLS. Why don't we let's throw that wrench right in the machine, right? It'll be fine.
So Silver Rocket good instead of
I don't know,
Orange
EJ,
Rocket good?
but you know, EJ, this is not just for launching; it's also transporting things. So I guess is the space transportation system.
We can call it that. That's fine. Yeah, we can do that. That's a good idea.
Why can I feel the wrath of Chris B right now? Just from mentioning STS that way.
Money Machine alongside a super chat is a good question. What ignition does Raptor 2 use? Alex, EJ, Sawyer, anyone got any details on how you actually start a Raptor 2 engine?
I think it's a torch igniter, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, that's just what Elon said on Twitter a long time ago. So you know, I
Elon
might
says
be
a lot
wrong.
of stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah.
Yeah, on the Raptor 2, they eliminated the igniters on the main combustion chamber, but obviously the preburners still have something to burn, so you need igniters on the preburners. And those igniters are spark igniters. Basically, you put gaseous oxygen on one side, you put gaseous methane on the other, and put a spark in the middle, and there you go. You have a torch igniter with a spark. So that's like a spark torch igniter, whatever.
Orc
We have a
igniter?
question.
Sorry. Spork igniter, maybe? No?
Spork. Yeah.
Anyway, we can go to the next question. Ryan, take it.
Trevor's asking, will they paint the new OLM shielding? So you can see around the outer rim of the orbital launch mount, they've put up some panels. They've been there for a couple of weeks now, I think. It's been absolutely manic. My sense of time has evaporated completely, but I think they've been on there for a couple of weeks. Do we know if they're going to be painting them like they do the legs? Because I know the legs are certainly directly in the path of 33 Raptor 2 engines firing full bore. So do we know if they're going to be protecting the protection in any sort of way?
I mean, it will be. Oh, go ahead.
No,
AJ.
Alex, do it. Go for it, man.
I was gonna say that it will look cool, painted and everything and all, but if they haven't done that yet, I don't think that we're gonna see that.
Yeah, it's been on there for a while now, so I would have imagined that they would have already started something if they were going to do something. It's not like the concrete, which they could just replace every time they fire the engines. We have another question in here from Florida Space Nerd asking, does Starship go on the first launch, or do we have to encounter the S word that Sawyer made a video out a few weeks ago later into the week? I'll go around everyone here. Alex, what do you think? First time, or are we going to see some scrubs?
I will say that a scrub is probably likely. Yeah. I'm not gonna say how many, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was at least one.
EJ, what do you think? Scrub, or are we going to see another Falcon Heavy perfect launch on the first attempt?
Well, you know, I feel like a sports commentator that's about to commentate on their favorite team, and I'm just gonna say the controversial thing. I think it'll go. I think they've done enough testing here to give it a reasonable enough probability of success. And we gotta remember, Ship 26 and Booster 8 are right there. They're not finished, but they're ready. They're gonna be ready to go sooner rather than later.
Sawyer, what do you think? Are we going or are we not going?
6 scrubs in a movie. Oh wait. I think we're gonna have a few. I mean, it's inevitable. It's a new rocket. They have a decent enough window that they can troubleshoot things, so I'm sure there'll be multiple attempts within the first window. But in terms of how many days of attempts, I think they can get it off by the third attempt, would be my guess.
All right. I'm going to throw my hat into the ring, and I'm going to say they're going to scrub at least once. So, best case scenario, if they get their license, everything sorted. Let's say, in a theoretical scenario, Monday's the date. I don't think it'll go Monday, but I think they'll have a very good chance of going the next day. I won't say it will. That's just my feeling at the moment. We have a good question here from Lyle, Lyle. However we think we should pronounce that, I'm not sure. What is the anticipated Starship orbit target distance? Will the ISS be able to see it? So, Alex, I don't think we've got any kind of details about the orbit, the trajectory which Starship will be taking. We know kind of which way it's headed, like the, the inclination, but we don't really know the maximum altitude which Starship is going to be able to reach, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and it's also true that the ISS could be at any point in the world at that point. I mean, we'll probably look it up, but it's totally likely that the ISS orbit is just like on the opposite side of the world, on the opposite side.
Yeah.
All the time during the 3-hour window. Like, it's totally possible that the ISS just doesn't have any chance to see any of this. Now, it is not unheard of, though, that the ISS just sometimes flies over certain launch sites, and they see launches. Actually, there was a recent Falcon Heavy launch, and they flew above KSC about 1-2 minutes into the launch, so they were able to see like the plume of Falcon Heavy as it was heading into orbit. But now again, it's a very unlikely event that you have to be in the right place at the right time to be able to spot this. So yeah, it's not like the ISS is just up there, right? It's like it goes up.
It's spinning around Earth very quickly.
Exactly, right? Because people think that it's going just up, but it's also going horizontal. You go around the Earth, and then the Earth is big, so the ISS could be just on the other side of the world, basically. So it doesn't really need to be right next to a Starship.
Yeah. I'm going to run through a few more of the super chats and things like that, because these are the people who help to make this stuff financially possible. Stephen asking, or saying, welcome to EJ as a contributor, long overdue. Question, at what point is this test more successful than N1? Max Q, question mark. The Soviet moon rocket, if you are unaware, the N1, it was the Soviet Union's competitor, should I say, to the Saturn V. But it had a 0% success rate, blowing up at some point after the pad. So does anyone have an idea of how far N1 actually got on its furthest attempt?
It didn't even get to staging. But then again, when they did fly it, and the one that got the furthest didn't have upper stages on it, they were using boilerplates for the second and third stage, if I'm remembering right.
It got close. They ended up still, regardless, activating the flight termination system, but better than their second attempt, which went up and then destroyed all of their, I guess we can still call it stage 0 then, all their ground support.
All of their pad infrastructure.
I wonder...
That's something...
They built two, it's fine.
I wonder how Sawyer knows all of this stuff off the top of his head.
I don't know. It's almost like I did an entire article and a video related to other super heavy lift vehicles. Ooh, what?
Oh, because that's a PA announcement.
Oh, we hear an announcement?
Oh, that's what that noise is.
Yeah. I couldn't hear it straight away, but thankfully we have a Starbase Live. So I can actually go out there and check it out myself. Yeah. So you keep talking out.
Can you figure out figure out what they were saying? We want to know. At least
they weren't blasting music again this time, so it's good.
Yeah. We also have Tracy, everyone's favourite Tracy. Thanks for the 1 Red Team membership gift. If you were the recipient of that, make sure to thank Tracy in chat. We have a Red Team membership being gifted by Jim. Thank you very much for that. Again, thank Jim if you're the recipient of that. We have a $10 super chat from Mika. Is that what we agreed on? Mika? Sawyer? I can't remember.
I don't think Sawyer's how you pronounce it. Oh. No, I think we went with Micah. But again, if we're
Well,
wrong,
okay.
please just tag us at NASASpaceflight and we'll correct it.
Tell,
I promise.
tell us if we're causing mass offense. Would love some toddler or sub-youth sizes in the store. My boy loves space rockets, but none of your stuff would fit him. I'm sure we can pass that over to the store team to get some different sized stuff. Kylie W, 10 Australian dollars, saying, hi, hello Ryan. Loving all the new content from the NS team. I know who you are. We have a store message from Victoria saying, I think the name Enterprise should be saved for the first passenger flight of Starship, which would be the Polaris 3 or whatever they end up calling it mission. Or it depends what Starship they get, because Crew Dragon, the first crewed missions on Crew Dragon flights have gotten the naming rights to the Dragon, like Endeavour and Endurance and Freedom and the other one, which I've forgotten. We also have...
I went back and
Alex.
listened to the PA announcement. It was just saying that they had venting on the orbital tank farm.
Oh, okay.
They announced those things because it's usually
the most
very loud.
boring announcement they can make.
Yeah, but if people are out there, those vents are very loud, and probably anyone that's being out there can basically attest to that yes, it's very, very loud. And so just they just announced that because it's needed, so people are aware, like, hey, there's gonna be some venting, don't be scared about that because it's normal.
Stig Robert with a store message, much love to you all, and EJ, you're doing great. There you got a Starship orbital flight test patch, which many of you in chat this evening have been saying you've been enjoying very much. We also have Adam, I bet a metal print on it making through stage sep. Fingers crossed it makes it. I think we all want this to get as far as it can go, but it's just a matter of whether Starship can actually keep itself together for that long. Ken Schaffer has become a new member, a launch director. That's a very high up there. We also have Ninja Decimator, who has upgraded to Capcom. That means you now get access to the Discord, if I'm getting that right. And we also have a super chat. Look at me. I said I'm a professional.
Capcom,
we also
above,
have
Capcom and above gets that, and as the launch director, you also get a special mention on the screen during our NASA Spaceflight lives on Sundays.
Launch director and flight engineer.
Yep.
There you go. See, it comes with experience. We also have Pat saying that's a strange message, but okay. We also have Jack Snap saying thank you, or not saying thank you for coming. You are a new member. Thanks for becoming a Red Team member, joining the membership program. I keep going through these and more things keep coming up. I'm trying to clear the queue, but things keep popping up. We also have a store message from Susan. Godspeed Starship. You got the t-shirt with the OFT patch on the back. We also have let's get into some more questions. Again, if you have a question for us, we'll do our best to answer it. Just tag NASA Spaceflight in chat. You don't need to give us money or anything. Just put it in chat. We'll do our best to answer it. Kichi S is asking, has any methane-fueled rocket reached orbit before? And this is a fact that I do know the answer to, which is no. But does anyone have a list of all of the different methane rockets that have tried to get to orbit before? I know there's a couple.
I'll go for the low-hanging fruit. I don't have a full list, but Relativity with Terran 1 very recently made it to staging. That's not close to space, but it's closer than most have been.
Yeah, technically made it to space, just didn't make it to orbit. Although the first Methalox vehicle to space was, I believe it was a Chinese rocket, right, Alex?
Yeah, the Suka 2 from land space. It reached almost orbit. Like it went to second stage ignition. The second stage is one main engine and 4 vernier engines. Near the end of the burn to go into orbit, it shuts down the main engine and then goes into the verniers, sort of like Proton and all of these other rockets from Russia and whatever. And those vernier engines basically failed when they transitioned to those, and it just it didn't work, so it didn't go into orbit. But it got very, very far away from the launch site. It got very, very close to orbit. So, and they're preparing for a second launch soon-ish. We don't know because it's China, so about that, and it's a private rocket, so it's doubly more secret. So yeah, we know they're getting ready because we've seen them doing some stuff via satellite pictures. Shout out to Harry, by the way.
Eyes in the sky.
Yeah, he's
Harry?
space from space. And yeah, that's the only other rocket. So Terran 1 and Suga 2, those are the only two Methalox rockets that have tried to go into orbit. And sadly, Terran 1 is not flying anymore because, Relativity is like, yeah, we're going to go ahead with Terran R because why not? And
Why not?
so now it's all on Starship and Vulcan and Suga 2 again when they try again.
Interesting thing, real quick, if I may. It's a kind of a interesting thing to understand. I'm not sure about the Chinese rocket, but during the Relativity cast, they did say that it's not Terran 1 is not running off full methane and full liquid oxygen. They are using liquid oxygen, but they're using an LNG mixture with propane and butane for, I believe it's stability, but I could be wrong on that one. But I know they were using a mixture. They were actually using LNG, so something more along the lines of what like New Glenn would be using. It's not. I mean, it's still mostly methalox. It's like 90%, but yeah, it's just something to note.
I thought it was closer to 95% or 98, but either way.
They were using it as for a stabilizer or something. I forget off the top of my head.
Yeah. It's interesting how they say for Terran R, like actual methane, they didn't mention at any point LNG, because and they actually say it's gonna be subcooled, sort of like here on Starship, and what they, how SpaceX basically cools the both the methane and the liquid oxygen below their boiling point. In the case of Terran R, they're gonna do that for the upper stage, but the first stage is only gonna be the methane. The oxygen is not gonna be subcooled, which is interesting decision, but okay.
Okay. Yeah, certainly interesting. Mr. Effing Blonde has a question, a serious question, may I add, in full caps. What is the engine out capability on the booster and ship? How many engines can they afford to have shut down during ascent before an abort is called? Now, I know for the booster, when they did the 33 static fire that became 31, Elon said on Twitter that they could still make orbit with that many engines. So does anyone have an idea of how many engines are still needed to get to orbit with the ship? Sorry, not the ship, the booster. And then also what the capabilities with engine outs on the ship are.
Oh, we got 33 engines in the first stage. Each Raptor is producing, about 2,200 kilonewtons of thrust? That puts total thrust output somewhere north of 70 meganewtons, which I'm going to go ahead and say with the first stage, you probably use a good deal of those engines. I'm not so sure about Starship. When you
AJ, I think your audio is a little bit quiet.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm trying to make sure not sound like a car.
Yeah, people are actually on the on chat like 0 by 0 and things like that. We can probably sort that out.
Yeah, I'll fix it. Give me 1 second. I will adjust it.
Yeah, so I can probably tackle that question if you want me to. So
yeah, go for it.
The engine out capability, it all comes down to what they can do. Yeah, like basically what they can do if they lose engines. And I believe Elon mentioned that if they lose 2 engines, it's okay. But this rocket has 33. It probably can lose a couple more and still be good to go into orbit. We've seen on Falcon 9 that if they lose 1 engine, they can go into orbit. So you could say that maybe 1/9 of all the engines can fail and still go into orbit. And that accounts for 3.66 engines. And since I do not think they can lose 0.66 engines, I'm gonna round that up to 4 engines. So they probably can lose 4 engines and still go into orbit. What about that? Just
Sounds
by
good.
comparing it to Falcon 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got a couple of super chat things kind of to go through, or membership things. 10 gifted memberships from Bob. If you receive one of them, make sure to thank Bob in chat. Thanks very much for the contribution. And Anton has become a Pad Rat member. Let's see through here what questions we have. Jason asking a Max Q related question. Is Max Q different for each flight based on what the rocket is made of, or does it occur at the same altitude? It's certainly to do with altitude in terms of the pressures and the velocities and all different kind of physicsy stuff like that, which I'm most definitely not qualified to talk about. So I'll hand that one off to someone who's much more qualified than I am.
Sawyer? Wanna tackle that one?
Sure. I mean, it's a lot of it has to do with aerodynamic forces. So it's not every rocket does it at the exact same time. Like Falcon 9, there are certain missions where it'll hit it around a minute 12. Sometimes it's a minute 10. This one, we're talking almost 3 minutes, I believe. So when it comes to it, it really has to do with when are there the most aerodynamic forces pressing down on the vehicle. So whatever point the vehicle is dealing with the most stress on it, that's considered max Q. So it's different every rocket, and essentially it can be different every flight.
That's very interesting. Thanks, Sawyer.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because a lot of people were asking, like, oh, super heavy, like, Starship is reaching max Q 55 seconds, and truly, Falcon 9 has also done that on some flights, and different just comes to even the trajectory, because if you go, so if you go horizontal way earlier on a more flatter trajectory, you are encountering more of the atmosphere for longer, right? And so your max Q actually shifts to the right. But if you're what you're gonna do is fly on a lofty trajectory going up for longer instead of going too horizontal. At the end of the day, what happens is you go faster into the thinner parts of the atmosphere, so that max Q time can actually move to the left, and so it occurs a little bit earlier. You can actually see, because I know EJ is probably listening. He's sorting out the audio issue, but he's probably listening, and basically this you can actually test this on KSP, and if you have KSP, try it out, because it's really easy to find out that if you turn very early, you're gonna find out your max Q is gonna happen very early too, but also at the same time, so it's too much, but you stay on max Q for longer, so it happens later. That's sort of what I wanted to say. So I think it was clear-ish. Yeah. We might have to do a video about that. What about? Ryan, let's go. run the camera.
24-hour turnaround again.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a 24-hour turnaround video, Tacos Potatoes is asking, on the SpaceX website, it shows the Starship timeline. They're not showing a flip for the water landing. Do we think this is right? And I certainly remember what I read out on the teleprompter. They're just going to be throwing Ship 24 into the Pacific Ocean. It's going to be at terminal velocity. There's not going to be any kind of powered splashdown, because how would they recover it? It's a massive thing. It's not like you can put it on the back of a 747 and fly it across the country like you could with shuttle. The Starship is massive.
Exactly. And again, all of this is covered in the new video that just went out today. But yeah, I mean, at this point, with them not essentially planning on not recovering it, it's going to be basically what we saw during the hop tests and, SN 8 through 11 and 15 and all that, just without any of the engines firing again. So it's unfortunately correct. It is going to be disposed of, but at least we should get a good understanding of, how the engines are working in space if we get to that point, and then how well the belly flop procedure does, basically.
Look at me go. J Trains 310 Gaming is asking, what's happened to Dragon Resilience? It hasn't flown since Inspiration 4. I'm really struggling this evening. It hasn't flown since Inspiration 4. And I think that's just a matter of scheduling. They've got 4 Dragons at the moment. I think there might be a 5th crew one being built, maybe. That's ringing a bell very far back in my mind.
Here's my understanding, is that the next flight that I believe that one will be used is Polaris Dawn, which will be the first one that has essentially an airlock in it, since that'll be the first private spacewalk. So I believe it's being outfitted and prepared for that in particular. That's also the capsule that has previously had docking hardware for the ISS and a cupola, or at least there are plans for a cupola. So yeah.
Yep.
Now you mentioned the airlock, Sawyer, that makes perfect sense why it hasn't been flying on the NASA and the Axiom crew rotation missions.
I was actually going to ask, are they actually going to put an airlock in there, or are they going to depress the entire capsule Gemini style?
Gemini style.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
But they still need the infrastructure in the capsule in order to actually do that and not cause anything bad to happen. which is not an easy thing to do. Tiny Dancer 49 is asking, are there still plans to add cladding to the Starship launch tower similar to the Falcon Tower at 39A? I certainly know some of the concept art that we've got from SpaceX, like the animations they've shown at Starbase updates and stuff like that. And the one they posted the other day, matter of fact, the two pads, the one that's there now and the one they want to build in future, they have cladding. Alex, do we have any word from SpaceX on any kind of aesthetic upgrades they'll be doing to the orbital launch pad?
Well, we saw some of the cladding. You can see sort of that patch of black stuff near where the chopsticks are located on the tower, and yeah, but that's all we've seen so far. Another PA announcement. Oh, extremely loud venting for Booster 7.
I just hear in 5 minutes.
Yep, so
Yeah,
everyone get
so
your
5
exclamation point
minutes.
vent ready for 5 minutes
Okay.
from now.
Hey Siri,
Ooh.
set a timer for 5 minutes. There we go. So now we'll know when that's expected to happen. We have a... were you finished answering the cladding question, Alex? Or do you have anything else to
Yeah,
add on
just
that?
basically that we only saw that, and we've seen material for more cladding, and the tower is ready to get that installed. But, they haven't installed yet, so I don't think they're going to install it until after the flight.
An interesting point Daniel is bringing up quickly, talking about splashdowns in a couple questions prior. Do we think that they'll fire both flight termination systems before they splashdown/land, however you want to word it, in the ocean, or let the explosives sink with them both? I'm not sure, because if they're just going to be throwing Ship 24 into the Pacific at terminal velocity, why as well they just blow it up? The booster, I think they want to try and simulate a chopstick landing. Would it make any sense to turn this massive rocket into smithereens before it touches the ocean? Anyone have an opinion on that one?
Well, on ascent, I do believe that they would safe the flight termination system. That's what they do with Falcon. When the stage reaches a velocity that's enough where it'll get destroyed by reentry. Now, I mean, the case might be a little bit different with Starship. They usually safe the FTS, and when they do, it's like a one-way switch. You can't unsafe it. Or you can't rearm the thing. It can only be armed once, and then in flight it'll safe it. So I think it's gonna belly flop right into the water.
That would be cool if we were able to see that. I really hope SpaceX has the way to see that.
Yeah, maybe some buoys finally with some cameras on them actually being used for the recovery of Starship 24, seeing it absolutely belly flopping, face palming into the Pacific Ocean. Hunter has a question along these lines. Shouldn't they still test the flip even if it won't be recovered? And I feel like part of not flipping and performing a soft water landing for the ship is because it's so big, SpaceX would then need to figure out what to do with it. They have this ginormous ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that they can't steer at all. So why would they want to perform a soft water landing? That's my perspective on that anyway. I don't know if Alex, EJ, Sawyer, you have any thoughts on that one.
I mean, even if it comes down and miraculously lands in one piece in the ocean, it's out in the Pacific testing range. I'm pretty sure there's some fighter plane or some warship jonesing to use something for target practice, I mean, who knows?
Sawyer, any thoughts? Are you here? Oh, hello, Sawyer.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm also doing a little work while we're doing this, but I mean, I get what you're saying is to get as much data as possible and try and test everything you can. But at this point, I think they have very set goals and objectives, and that's their main thing right now is to, test certain things in particular. It may also be that they're also not expecting to get that far in the flight too, and are just saying it's not a big deal. If that is the case, let's just focus on, the re-entry aspects and how the heat shield works and things like that.
Mm-hmm. There's an interesting store message here from Pascal asking, do you think Starship would be allowed to lift off if not all 33 engines light normally? Or nominally, as John Innsbrucker would say. And how would the non-gimbaling VAC Raptors deal with losing an engine? Could they fire the sea-level engines in space? And I can note on that bit in a second. Thank you for all your coverage since the early days, nerds. And Pascal got the patch sticker. So yeah, they're going to be firing the sea-level Raptors at stage separation. I know that because I read it for the video that went out earlier today. But what about the engine out capability before launch? I know we commented on this previously, but there's loads of new people in the stream. Hello, everyone. So, Alex, what are the thoughts before T0 of engine out capabilities?
Yeah, I don't think they will lift off if not all engines have ignited, because that is not ideal. And you want to preserve all of the sort of engine out scenarios where if you actually lose an engine during flight, you already are not carrying two engines out. So imagine you have the booster, it ignites the engines, two engines are out, it lifts off, then in flight it loses one engine. That's not good because now you're three engines out. Whereas if you lift off with all 33 engines and then one engine goes out in flight, well, you still have you are only one engine out. It's way more chances to actually get into the desired trajectory because it's not an orbit, whatever. We actually were very careful yesterday when we were drafting the script for the video to not call it an orbit, more like the targeted trajectory or desired trajectory or whatever, because of that. So yeah, it's just a matter of safety concerns. I personally wouldn't let it fly without less than 33. And I think it will not make sense to let it fly without 33 because, frankly, you can just shut the engines down, abort the launch, come to the pad, look at the engines, repair them, change them, whatever, right? And then lift off again, now properly with all 33 engines.
Mm-hmm. Will here with a super chat is asking when restack, and that's going to be happening after the flight termination system is armed, and we're expecting that nearer the flight. So if they're gonna go for Monday, I guess we could be seeing that.
Rip headphone users.
Well, after I was very rudely interrupted by Booster 7.
I mean, they did warn us at least.
Yeah, they did.
To be fair to SpaceX, they warn us.
Still going.
There we
go, finally. Thanks, Booster 7. At least we did get the warning. Yeah, going back to Will's question, when restack, that's going to be after they arm the FTS, the flight termination system pins, and we're expecting that to happen just before launch, like a day or two before. So if they're going to go for Monday, Saturday, Sunday, Alex, EJ, is that what we'll think for the restack?
Yeah, I would say they're gonna integrate it as close as they can to launch. I think that's fair. Fair to assume that.
And we also have this question from Pedro. Are Booster 7 and Ship 24 expected to float in the Gulf of Mexico / Pacific Ocean? Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and do a little bit of speculation. The last water landing we had from SpaceX was CRS-16, which wasn't meant to be a water landing, but it was a hydraulic malfunction with the grid fins that meant it couldn't steer properly back to the Cape. It's meant to be an RTLS, a return to launch site recovery. It didn't get that far. It soft water landed in the Atlantic. And when that fell over, it remained largely intact, and they managed to tow it back into port and salvage some of the parts. In fact, some of the cold gas thrusters, they're on Starhopper, so they used parts again from that booster. It floated and it was fine. Super Heavy, though, it's a different vehicle. It's much larger. I feel like it would get more inertia as it flips over and then crashes, kind of splashes into the ocean. I'm not sure if it will be able to stay intact, and also the ship, if it's going to be facepalm in the Pacific Ocean at terminal velocity, I don't think there's a chance that it will stay intact and float, but maybe different parts can float. Any thoughts on the booster falling over and surviving that?
Well, I think, I mean, you got to remember when CRS-16 did its dunk into the ocean, the interstage ended up getting wrecked from it tipping over. The interstage, which is, I mean, it's definitely not metal. I mean, this thing is, the whole booster is stainless steel. I mean, it very well could hold up. I mean, it's possible. I wouldn't fly it again after it's been in the ocean if you could somehow get it back, but the interstage is what cracked. As far as I could tell from the CRS-16 landing, the tank pressure vessels seem to be okay. I mean, seem to be okay. Like, once again, I just want to put it out there. They didn't fly that booster again, so they probably weren't okay. Aluminum doesn't really like being pushed around like that, but it's possible that it could float. Like, the stainless might be able to hold up to a larger fall like that.
And
I'm of the
musical
opinion that
go
no,
on,
it's
Alex.
not going to survive.
Yeah.
Well, Ship 24 is definitely not surviving. Even if it re-enters
I
one
agree
piece,
with that.
it's not surviving that belly flop at terminal velocity. Even though the terminal velocity might be like 80, 90 meters per second, it's still a lot.
Yeah. The surface of Hawaii are going to be getting a few waves that they can ride from S-24's impact to the Pacific Ocean. Musical Wolves is looking...
It's very, very big, as EJ said.
Yeah. Musical Wolves looking further beyond the first orbital integrated Starship flight test. I'll combine all the names into one. How quickly can we expect the second orbital test? Now, Alex, have we got any idea from SpaceX just how short the gap between Booster 7 and Booster 9 are going to be launching with ships on top? Do we know what ships are going to be used? Do we know any of this, or is it still all up in the air?
Well, there was someone, I don't know who wrote an article about this actually, where, explaining sort of what SpaceX was kind of looking for after the first flight, and it's very SpaceX, to say the least. It's basically like they want the first few flights one after the other within 30 days of each other, basically. And I'm gonna say that's not gonna happen. Like, definitely not gonna happen. It seems like after the first launch, they're gonna go all in and install the deluge system on the pad, because they have it sort of halfway through right now. They have the water tanks, some of the pipes going up to the tower, basically up to the base of the tower. But from there onwards, all the way to the OLM, there's nothing else that they have done. Precisely because right now it's lunchtime, right? But once it is lunchtime and rat time, maybe, once this thing has already launched, the OLM is gonna be completely clean and whatever, right? So they're gonna be able to go out there and install the deluge system. So that's what we're expecting to see for that second flight. Again, how long it's gonna take, I don't know, but I bet it's gonna be after summer. I don't see it happening before or during the summer. I'm seeing that after the summer.
Okay. I kind of agree with that timeline. It does make sense. It gives SpaceX time to sit back, take a little bit of a breather, look over the data, get everything ready, and if it doesn't go as planned on the first attempt, they've got another attempt to stick it. Falcons Maze, not Falcon, Falcons Maze. On the SpaceX graphic for the flight profile, it shows a flip maneuver. Is that to do with the stage separation? I definitely know we spoke about that in the video that went out today. And it's not actually got a pusher system. It's got a latch system between the ship and the booster, but it doesn't actually have a pusher system. It's more of a spin it, get some inertia, and just let Starship drift away system. It's a bit of a... But there's also uncertainty around that. It's an unconfirmed system that we don't really know about, if I've got that correct.
Yeah. So... Oh.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, what I wanted to explain that when it says flip, it refers to the booster flipping back and heading for basically back to do the boost back burn. Posting an infographic for Falcon 9 because it says the same thing. Flip maneuver, cold gas thrusters, flip the first stage. In the case of Super Heavy, it doesn't have cold gas thrusters. It uses the own tank vents to do that. But maybe one of the operators today can show that. I left that on the back channels, by the way. But yeah, it shows that Falcon 9 also does its own flip. It's basically like this. The Transporter 7 mission that we're going to see tomorrow, hopefully, if weather cooperates, that is going to be sort of like this kind of thing, where the first stage is just going to go up, going to throw the second stage, it's going to turn around, boost back burn, go down to the landing pad at Vandenberg. In the case of Super Heavy, though, it doesn't go to the landing pad, it goes to the water, and it does its simulated landing, whatever they're gonna do with the booster. They're gonna do a landing burn, but we're not sure how it's gonna be that landing burn. And then the second stage goes and does its thing. So it's gonna be similar. The flip there is not the flip and burn from the Starship. It's or the stage separation is from the booster going back and doing the boost back burn.
Space Vulture has a good question to do with the sea level raptors on the ship. I'm just trying to get this to go up. The sea level raptors, if they're not going to be attempting a soft water landing on the ship, what are the sea level raptors for? Well, they're actually going to use them during the separation of the booster and the ship. The first burn is going to include the vacuum and sea level raptors underneath Starship, and also they'll want the engines there to simulate the mass and where it is and how a ship actually flies, because if we were going to pull out components just for this orbital flight test, then you wouldn't really be testing Starship at all, because it's going to be not utilizing so much of its potential capability. If you're going to pull out all these parts, then you're not really fulfilling the point of the flight test. So the ship and the booster will certainly have things there. It's not an orbital. Well, this is something that can be debated, right? But it's not an orbital flight. It's not staying in orbit forever. So yeah, the ship and booster will have components that they potentially won't need for this flight, but they need them there to test them, which is the point of the flight. So it's a bit of a conundrum, really. I don't really know how else to
test as you fly, man. Test as you fly.
Yeah.
And it's important to know that the sea level raptors are not used just for landing. They are used also for orbital insertion. This mission is not gonna have a proper orbital insertion, but it's still the burn of the Starship stage to the desired trajectory, whatever you want to call it, right? That ballistic trajectory all the way to Hawaii, and they still fire all 6 engines. It's the 3 vacuum and the 3 sea levels. The sea level is not that it can only be lit on sea level. No. What it means is that it is optimized for work on sea level, whereas the vacuum one, it is optimized for use on the vacuum of the space. It is not that they cannot. In fact, the vacuum one needs like some sort of protective rig on the nozzle to be able to be fired at the sea level, but you can still fire it at sea level. It's not that because one is vacuum and the other is sea level, you cannot fire on the other medium, so to speak, right? So it's not that it is totally impossible. You can, in fact, the sea level engine is more efficient in a vacuum than it is at sea level. It's just not as efficient as the vacuum engine, because the vacuum engine is optimized for that medium. So that's why it is the vacuum Raptor, or the Raptor vacuum, whatever you want to call it.
So those Vector engines have a bigger expansion ratio on the nozzle. Long story short, it means it's a bigger nozzle. The reason why they do that is, there's a plain Jane way of saying it. The plain Jane way of saying it is that when you're up in the vacuum, there's no ambient air pressure to keep the gases that are coming out of the nozzle going in the same direction. Down here, when you're in the atmosphere, the flames that come out of the rocket engine, the hot gases that's coming out, tend to be in more of a column. As you get higher and higher up into the vacuum, it will go from a column to more of a cone. And if you don't have the right expansion ratio, you're not going to get the most impulse that you could out of the engine. Now, theoretically, you could have a nozzle that expands forever, but that might get a little bit heavy. But it really comes down to a trade-off here. Can you fit a bigger nozzle in there? Some engines do. Some upper stage engines have a compromise, like an RL-10C, for instance, will have a small nozzle extension because that's what they can fit on Atlas V, for instance. Or you could have an RL-10B2 that's used on the ICPS on SLS and the DCSS, the Delta Cryogenic second stage on Delta IV, that has a nozzle extension that actually is on screw jacks, basically, that when the vehicle stages, the nozzle actually sheaths over the static part of the nozzle and actually gives you a bigger expansion ratio and is more efficient.
Very interesting.
Indeed.
We have a question here from Mini Dr. M. Won't Starship, won't the booster turn off its engines over 50 meters in the air if they're going to simulate a catch? So wouldn't they turn off the engines before it hits the water? Now, this is a part of the flight we don't really know a lot about. The most detail we kind of have here is the graphic which SpaceX published, and that graphic, again, isn't always correct. So we kind of have to play a bit of a guessing game with this one, but it depends to what degree of simulation that SpaceX would want to do with the booster. They won't have a tower and chopsticks there to figure out what they're doing, so yeah, I have no clue what SpaceX is planning to do with the booster. All I know is that they're planning to perform some kind of landing burn, whether it turns off 50 meters above the ocean or in the ocean, I don't know. Alex, have you got any thoughts on that?
I mean, sure. I don't know. To be honest, my answer is just we don't really know, because they could attempt to simulate the landing 50 meters off the ground, but frankly, you can simulate the landing 100 meters off the ground. You can simulate right on the ground, because at the end of the day, what changes is the chopsticks are going to be at a certain height, basically opened, and the booster just needs to go into the chopsticks. But where, like the altitude where the chopsticks are going to be located, it's not really that big of a deal whether it is 50 or 100 or like 10, for example. It's not really that big of a thing. So it could be, as the question says, 50 meters in the air. It could be 10. It could be right on the ocean. So we don't really know, and that's an open question from SpaceX. They might not even test a catching, like a simulation. They could just do a break and burn. They just try to slow down the booster all the way to the surface of the ocean, and that's it. Like, not any sort of special guidance or anything. Just go zero at altitude 0, and that's it.
Steve Bowen, who I'm going to guess is not the astronaut currently on the ISS, is super chatting. Isn't it nearly 100 tons light with no payload? So would it be able to lose a bunch of engines on the orbital test flight before it would affect the launch? I'm also going to kind of guess that as this is a test of the vehicle, they want to test it in the theoretical worst possible scenario, like it's got a bunch of payload on board, or will they want to or will they want to collect as much data as possible, potentially losing engines to try and get the ship as far as they want to go? EJ, do you have any ideas on that one?
Well, what I was saying before, apologies about my mic getting a little quiet before. What I was saying is that, so we have 33 Raptors in the first stage. Each one of them produce about 2,200 kilonewtons of thrust, somewhere about 500,000 pounds, in the ballpark around there. 33 of those together gives you, in change, and keep in mind, guys, this is napkin math, it's about, 70 meganewtons of thrust, or about 15 million pounds of thrust. That's double, like SLS in Saturn V. I do think that it could lose engines. You could lose a good deal of them. Not a good deal. I wouldn't want to lose a lot. But also at the same time, when SpaceX is gonna go to do this test, you ideally don't want any surprises. So yeah, if a couple of engines don't do their thing, the computer shuts them off, they run engine rich and start shooting green flames out, it might be okay. But ideally, you configured the computer, the auto sequencer on board to command 33 engines to start, you want 33 engines to start. You don't want the engineering to do something that you don't frankly understand. That can lead to deviant engineering. And we know, if you know anything about spaceflight, deviant engineering is not what you want. It's important to understand what you made and understand how it works. So if you want 33 engines to start during a test flight, you need 33 engines to start. With that being said, I do think that Starship has 33 engines, so it can afford to lose one if needed. But engine out capability is pretty typical of most rockets flying at this point. A good scenario would be like Starliner with the Atlas N22 variant with a dual engine Centaur, because it's human rated, and if one RL-10 fails, you have another one that can get you an abort to orbit trajectory similar to the shuttle. It's just, you take the added complexity to retire some risk there. But if you want 33 engines to start, you need 33 engines to start. I don't think it's going to get very far without it.
Yeah. The redundancy part of Starship is a key part of what Starship is meant to be. It's meant to be a rapidly reusable, get stuff into space as quickly as possible system, and by having the redundancy of multiple engines, it makes it easier for it to be that vehicle. Because if you only have one or two engines on there, or 5 engines, like the F1s on the Saturn V, if one of them goes out, there's a higher percentage of your engines which have just been knocked out in flight. And as we saw on Apollo 13 on the second stage, they could still do stuff right, I think, but it was suboptimal, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, if you enter an engine out contingency, it puts a vehicle into what's called it's not exactly called a failure mode, but these different modes of flight are basically where the computer on board the vehicle says, oh, I lost an engine, I'm going to shoot for this orbit instead, because if we try to shoot for the orbit that we needed with 5 engines, well, you don't have the TWR to get there, so you'll abort to a lower orbit that will be relatively stable, a more stable parking orbit that you could get to. Because remember, you have an engine out, your TWR, your thrust to weight ratio on your second stage, which is super freaking important, just went down. So your delta V will kind of go up a little bit, but you're not really, if you tried to fly on that same trajectory, even with when one engine conked out, you're still facing running out of fuel before you get to that point, because now the rocket has to move more dead weight or dead mass.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Just going to have a look through here quickly for some more questions. Ehu8888 asking, how accurate does Starship need to be at landing, or when they do like a splashdown during the OFT? Now, for the people who are kind of now just joining us as we get about 80 minutes into the stream here, Starship is basically going to be face palming belly first into the Pacific Ocean. So the NOTMAR, the Notice to Mariners, is massive in the Pacific Ocean. It's a massive piece of ocean which is covered by this NOTMAR. So Starship doesn't really have to be that accurate once it's into its final trajectory that'll punt it over the punt it around the Earth, basically. So yeah, Alex, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Starship's what's the word? Accuracy during the belly flop into the Pacific Ocean.
Well, as you mentioned, they have a really big area of the ocean that they can, because if it doesn't survive, oh, there we go, that's you.
It's me. It's me.
Yeah, that's you. And the area on the ocean is so big, and it is because this is not just going to be belly flopping, it's also re-entering from orbit, right? And so there's the total possibility that the heat shield doesn't survive, and it just basically breaks up during re-entry. So they have to account for that as well. So you see that big stretch of ocean just covered, with that hazard zone precisely, so that, if there's any breakup of a Starship, it's no big deal.
Yeah. So we've been going for a little while here. As we kind of start to wrap up the stream a little bit, we want to just throw it over to the merch store quickly, because if you didn't know, we have got some awesome metal prints that we have been, basically the Starbase photographers have been absolutely sending images up to the merch store. They've been getting converted into metal prints, and you yourself can purchase them and put them on your wall. This photo is just from the other day. There was a beautiful rainbow over Starbase, and I think this photo is from Nick. Got a incredible shot of the colors of the rainbow popping behind the Starship. We also have this sunset one from Nick of Hoppy in the foreground, everyone's favorite Starship prototype because it's the only one with a name. That's what we established at the start of the show. We also have loads of different metal prints from different rockets. And of course, most of them Starship, but we've got like Atlas and Delta and Falcon and many different rockets from many of NASA spaceflight's different photographers. And we also have the rocket garden there with every rocket you could ever want. And we have the static fire, we have SLS, we have loads of different metal prints. And of course, we have the rest of our merch collections all out there as well. So if you want to pick up some cool swag and help support NSF while you do it, that's all available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. But for now, I think we'll be wrapping up. So thanks everyone for joining us. I've been your host. My name's Ryan Caton. I've been with you for the last 90 minutes. Alongside me in the comms box, we've also had Alex. Thanks for coming on today.
Always a pleasure.
And we've also had alongside us EJ. Thanks for coming on the stream today, EJ.
Well, thank you for having me. Sure was a pleasure.
And chiming in now and then and helping out with the questions, we also had Sawyer.
Thank you very much. It feels like Alex, Ryan, you and I have had quite a bunch of time together these last couple of days, so it's nice to share all the conversations and fun we've been having with Starship with everyone watching. So yeah.
We certainly have indeed. And also working in the background, we've got Kevin and Patrick working on the streams, getting all of the stuff ready for the OFT, which is so exciting. It's so close. Is it going to happen on Monday? I don't know. You know where to find us if we think it's going to be launching on Monday. But for now, thanks everybody for tuning in over the last hour and a half. Hopefully we'll see you for our next broadcast or video or wherever you want to see us next. Thanks for watching, everybody, and goodbye.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Look at this! Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? We don't need any more of these.